families, you know, it's important for them to have some sense of their own history.
Well, we go back to the First World War. So that's a lot of years ago.
Right. Well, your dad was in the First World War, wasn't he?
Yes, but I don't think he was overseas.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember, but I don't think he was overseas.
I've got a couple of pictures, Lucy, of a mill, and it's pictures of you and your father and your husband Jim and Doreen and Isabelle, and Richard's about 11, something like that.
A mill.
9, 10, or 11, something like that. Yeah. Did your dad?
A sawmill?
Yeah. Did your dad run a little mill?
Well, no, I don't think so. He might have worked at it, but he didn't run it. He didn't own it.
Okay.
But that would be what year?
Well, if Richard was, I don't know, 12 in those, then that would be about 1940.
See, that back in those days we lived in Edmonton for a while. That was before that.
Well, Richard was born in Trail.
Yeah.
So I guess it would have been Trail or Nelson or something?
We lived in Nelson for a while, and then my dad got a job in Trail, and we moved to Trail. Lived quite a while in Trail.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I got married.
Uh-huh.
So it was quite a hectic life those days.
Uh-huh.
But wherever he could get a job, that was where my dad went.
Uh-huh.
You know, mind you, he was a carpenter, but he depends what kind of a job it was, you know. And that's how it come to be the job in Trail. They wanted somebody like what he could do. He could do all kinds of things, you know.
Uh-huh.
So he got this job in Trail, and at the time they were living in Cranbrook. After we left the homestead. Got fed up with the homestead, I guess. But Grandma and Grandpa were still on the homestead. Grandma and Grandpa Andrews.
Mm-hmm.
I think it seems to me, and I'm not sure about this, but that the government granted returned soldiers, you know, the opportunity to take up a section of land at a very low rate. And I forget how many acres a section of land was. It was a lot of land. And I had an Uncle Willie. He was the oldest in my dad's family. There's him and Grandma and Grandpa and Dad. Not my dad. I guess it was my dad. There was 4 of them anyway. Decided they'd divide this. I think it was a section. Each quarter section had I don't know how many acres in it. A lot of land, and this was in Alberta, out of Edmonton. And they were each going to have their own little plot, you know.
Hi there.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh well, not bad. Hey Mom.
Hi there.
Here, you have a seat
Yeah,
here.
sit.
No.
I can't stay long.
You sit there.
Why?
I have to go babysit.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Who's babysitting this time?
Danielle and Andrea. You sit there, Jim.
No, you sit there. I'm just warming it up for you. Didn't even get it warm, so you sit there.
out?
Not bad, no. Not too bad. Wet.
It's raining?
No, it's not raining, but it's damp, you know.
Yeah.
So,
I was trying to get Lucy to talk about these two pictures, which are of some sort of mill, and she wasn't sure, just when or where that was. But Richard, what is he? He's about 11, 12 there, right?
I would
13.
think so.
So that'd be around 1940.
Looks like a little sawmill, Mum.
And you're in there as well.
Was printed in Trail. But Grandpa's there. And Richard. And Jimmy and Daddy. And I think that's Bert Milne. And it looks like me. But I look to be about maybe, 3 or 4? That looks like Doreen. That's you, I think, Mom.
I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying to think how far back that is, where we'd be living.
Well, at the back of it, Mom, it was the Better Photos, Trail BC is where it was developed.
Oh. Well, my dad must have been working up at the smelter at the time.
Well, this looks like a little Jippo sawmill.
A little what?
Jippo sawmill.
Jippo.
Yeah, never heard that word?
I guess.
That's what it looks like, Mom.
I'm trying to think. That wouldn't be Trail, I don't think.
Well, as I say, it was developed in Trail.
Might have been Cranbrook.
Well, then why would it be developed in Trail?
I don't know.
Because it's stamped right on the back of it. Better Photos, Trail BC.
What photos?
Better Photos.
Oh.
So that must have been the name of the place where it was developed.
It must have been, yeah. Gosh, that's
But it's a
many
whole
years ago.
family there.
So it wasn't that your dad ran a little sawmill.
No. We used to go on picnics and that. We'd get together, the whole gang. And I can't remember where. There was a little lake we used to go beside. I can't remember where that was out of.
Ah, so maybe it's a picnic, eh?
It's hard to say.
But as I say, it looks like a little Jippo sawmill
Yeah.
out in the bush.
Yeah, it could be too. There's all kinds of things like that around there. I shouldn't say all kinds, but there was some. Excuse me.
But it's definitely family.
You know, with your dad, I remember my dad, Richard, saying that your dad was always trying some new get-rich scheme and it never worked. And he remembers one time when they had a little orchard, they tried a little orchard, and at the end of the summer, I think they made $5 from the orchard, and he moved around. You guys moved around a lot, I guess, which is one of the reasons why Dad said he wanted to give me a place that, you know, where they didn't move
Yeah.
very much.
Well, that's true. Well, you see, he got his discharge from the army. And that's when they moved out to the homestead. Homestead, as they call them in those days. Because there was a special deal involved somehow or another.
Right.
I don't know how, but I guess you could find out someplace. And then it was out, well, we were living out in Rochford Bridge. It was when Tommy died. We had to walk 3 miles to school. And walking 3 miles to school in the wintertime, in those days, was cold, cold, cold. And he got pneumonia. And Mum had to take him into Edmonton. And Uncle Tom's folks let Mum bring him to their place to look after it. But he died. Little things like that, you know, so many years ago.
Yeah.
What was your father like? What was his personality like?
Well, he was quite a happy person at times, and at other times he's quite bossy and used to get really annoyed with things. But Mom seemed to think he was all right, although sometimes she'd get pretty mad at him too.
Well, that's normal.
It was a tough life, I'm telling you. When you were living out in the homestead.
Yeah, well, these pictures were taken after that because I'm in them.
Oh, well, yes, that's a long time after that. That's after I was grown up.
Oh, yeah. Obviously. Dorian and Jimmy and I are all in here, so this had to be taken in the early 40s.
Yeah, that's in, let me see, where would we be then?
Well,
Trying to remember where we
it
did.
was either Kraslower Trail.
Well, sometimes when
And with Bert being there, I would say we were probably living in Trail.
probably we were.
Because he's full grown.
Bert Milne.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Must have been Trail.
And I only look to be maybe 3 or 4. I don't know.
Oh, my goodness, you weren't very old.
No.
Yeah, it must have been Trail.
Jimmy looks to be maybe 9, 10 in that area.
It's awfully hard to remember that far long ago. Some younger ones might remember it a lot better than I do.
Oh, Dorian might remember. She remembers things that I don't remember. And of course, I'm pretty young there, so I have no idea.
Yeah, she is pretty good at remembering things.
Well, maybe next time she comes over, we'll have to pick her brain.
So Larry has a lot of the pictures, is that right?
Larry's got some of Mum's pictures. He wanted to do up a family video or whatever on all the family. I've still got some at home. You can get them all.
I'd like to see those.
I must have 4 or 5 of her albums still at home.
Some really old ones?
I don't know. I can't remember what's in these ones.
Well, that's a lot of years ago. I can't even remember them sometimes myself. But I remember certain incidents, like Tommy dying and why he died, and things like that. Hard times we used to have out there at Rochford Bridge. And,
Well, when you lived there, was that Grandpa's mum and dad, your dad's mum and dad, or was that your mum's mum and dad?
no, that was my
Your granny and grandpa.
Anders.
Grandpa's mum and dad.
Yeah.
Grandpa Anders.
We never ever
Your
met
dad.
my mom's folks.
Mm.
they were moving out to Belleville, Illinois. And Mom was supposed to go down there too. But instead of that, she met our dad on the train coming from wherever the heck the boat landed, down in the eastern part somewhere.
Probably Montreal.
And they were coming west, and they were all on this train. And before they got to, where was it they landed? Anyway, in BC, someplace. Apparently, Mom and Dad scooted off someplace and got married. No, I think, I'm not positive about that, but I think that's what happened because she didn't want to go with this some man taking her. She didn't want to go anyway where they were going, and in the meantime, her and my dad had got really friendly, on the train. And apparently they hooted off by themselves, but I guess they must have got married because they were living together. And they got off in, heck was that place? Can't remember now where they got off. And got married, and they lived there for a while. That was Rochford Bridge, I guess it must have been. It's a lot of years ago, you know. I wasn't that old myself in those days.
Well, they must have moved from there to Edmonton then. Because you were born in Edmonton.
Yeah, they moved from Edmonton out.
Oh, well, then they must have gone off the train in Edmonton, did they?
I don't know whether they did or not. But I know that they moved out of it. Well, I don't know whether they moved out of Edmonton or not, but I know Edmonton was sort of passed. We did too. I suppose we didn't live in Edmonton, but we did. But that was a few years later.
Yeah, because you were born in Edmonton.
Yes, I know, but we had different places we lived between Edmonton, between then and what we're talking about here. I'm as mixed up as I can be. Yeah, it was kind of a mixed up time of life. When my dad came home from after he got his discharge, was when he got this, he and my uncle, Willie, he was the eldest. They decided to take this section of land and divide it between the four of them. Apparently, how big is a section?
I don't know.
I have no idea. I can't remember, Mum.
Anyway, it was to be divided into four, Grandma and Grandpa. Uncle Willie, and
And your dad.
Uncle Tom, I think. Not sure about that. And Dad. So it was, I always remember going out there with a team of horses, and it was a terrible day, rain and flood. These poor horses were trying to, they must have had quite a load. They were having a whole time getting on in mud puddles. Some of the things I can remember, I'm telling you, would shock you. It just was sort of the way things were in those days. Couldn't do much about it, you know. I remember one time, my brother was 2 years younger than me,
That was Tommy.
Tommy. And there used to be a family out of Rochford Bridge. We used to get milk from it. We had to go out there to get it off the farm. And we were coming back home. And in those days, they used to have ditches alongside the roads to get the runoff off the main part of the road, you know, because there was no pavements or anything like that then out there. And the ditch would have been about so wide at the top and then not too deep. Tommy decided he was going to go in the. We all wore rubber boots in those days, high rubber boots. He decided he was going to wade in the water in the ditch, and I tried to get him to come out of it, and he wouldn't come. And then he got stuck. He couldn't get out. His boots wouldn't let him get out. They were stuck good and tight. So I got a hold of him and tried to get him to get him out, you know. And I finally did manage to loosen him up enough to get him out. By that time I was stuck. You know, I can still remember that. I could not move my foot 1 inch. And I thought, now what am I going to do? Mom and Dad will be furious with me. Because I was supposed to kind of protect Tommy. So the only way I could get out was to take my feet out of my overshoes, my rubber boots. So I had to take my shoes out of my rubber boots, but I couldn't get my boots out. Oh, I remember how mad Mom was at me. Of course, I got all the blame. But little things like that, you know, when I look back on them, are quite keen. And yet some other things which are much more realistic, I can't remember at all, or at least not very well. But you wonder sometimes why it is the least important things that have the most right memory in your mind, you know. Several different things like that would happen. But, and I was about the only girl in this little town, Rochford Bridge. The rest of them were all boys. And of course that was a problem too. And so we had to go to school. In the summer we had to walk, but in the wintertime we still had to walk. But sometimes there was 2 boys. One in one family, one in a different family, and they each had a horse. So they used to take their horses to work, to school, which I think was about 3 miles away. The rest of us all had to walk. And remember this day, one of them said, "Do you want to ride?" And I said, "Sure, I'll have a ride." "Hop on," he says, "get on the back." So I got up on the horse on the back behind the saddle. And just as I nicely got settled there, he reared the horse up. The way I went skittering off the back end of the horse. Was my mother ever mad? She sure was mad about that. But one of these boys, their father ran the hotel sort of thing they had there. And the other one was an auctioneer. They used to have a lot of auctioneers in those days, you know, that sold properties. Or if you wanted to sell your property, you hired an auctioneer. So he was quite common for that. But we managed. It took us a long time, but we finally got out of there. My dad built a house on the homestead, which never did actually get finished. Quite a large house, too. Then he built another house in Rochford Bridge up on the hill. And I know when we went back there that one summer, and I was asking him where this house was. "Oh," he says, "that burned down a long time ago." He says, "A bunch of tramps got using it for a stopover." He says, "That's what happened. They set fire going and burned the house down." So there was that. But things you remember from your childhood, you wonder now how we ever managed to stand such a life. And Mom was so what you'd call her, but she was very old country, you know. She didn't have any use for farming or anything like that. And she couldn't adjust herself to the ways we were living. She had an awful time. I used to feel so sorry for her. But, on the other hand, it was the way life was in those days.
Well, Grandpa was quite a wanderer from what I can remember. It was always him and Uncle Tom. Wasn't it Uncle Tom were always prospecting?
My grandpa.
Your dad.
Oh, my dad. Oh, yeah. Well, you see, they all had this section of this land. A quarter section of it. But we were the only ones that lived up there. Grandpa, and Dad, and Mom. And three of us. Me, Vi, Pat, and Tommy. 4 of us. But, it was quite a life, I'm telling you. Milk. Well, we bought our milk off the farm, if I remember correctly. But I wouldn't want to go back to that kind of life, I can tell you that.
Well, we had a little bit of that when we lived in Langley.
No, nothing to what.
We lived in a chicken coop. Dad built this building on our Loch Hill. Was going to eventually be the chicken coop, and that's where we lived. It was brand new. No chickens had ever been in it. With canvas walls.
And where were you talking about?
In Loch Hill.
Oh yes, on that piece of land.
We'd pack our water and pack the sawdust for the stove. And
Bob and Evan wanted to come out there to live. As a matter of fact, they did start to build a little house out there.
they did build a house there.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that's still standing on that property now.
Is that
It's
right?
that little house, yeah. The barn's gone, the chicken
Yeah,
coop's
the barn
gone.
burnt down apparently.
That old building at the front that we had the sawdust and kept the car in,
Yeah.
it's gone.
Oh yeah. Is there anybody living on it?
I think there's somebody living in that little house.
Oh. I haven't been out there for.
Last time Doreen and I drove out there was somebody living there.
Oh. I don't think I've driven by there for many years.
So who was living there with you?
We lived in the place, Richard and Jimmy and Mum and Dad and Doreen and I. And then Richard and the boys built Bob and Evelyn a little house off to one side. They only had Billy then. Because I know we used to go over and babysit Billy periodically. If they were all going out someplace.
It's about a years ago.
I think Richard built that place, didn't he? At least paid for it.
I think it was he and Evelyn that started it anyway.
Bob and Evelyn?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think Richard had anything to do with it.
I thought he had built it.
I don't think so. He was just one of you kids. Not you, of course. But
Well, he was an adult by that time.
What year would that have been around?
Oh, about 47,
I think so.
48, in there someplace.
So Richard had been 19 or 20, something like that.
Yeah, they worked out in the bush up at Chehalis by Harrison. Daddy and Jimmy and Richard all worked up there, and then Bob went up there too.
Yeah, in those days you wherever you get a job, that's where you went to work.
But Dad got the boys all, the 3 of them, to work up at logging camp.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly a happy life, I can tell you that. I know many a time I thought back on it and think of a terrible way to have to live.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, we were lucky we had food in our mouths. which is more than some of them had.
That's right.
Things were really tough. But to sit down and remember a lot of these incidents would be something, I'm telling you. And my dad, he had quite a temper. Things didn't go his way. He sure let us know about it. But it was a tough life too. Big cows to milk. And when we lived up the bigger road there, we had how much land we had?
40 acres.
That's a section, eh? 40 acres?
No, that's just what we had.
Oh, is this in Langley? Or?
Yeah, this was in Langley. This was up at Lochiel. We had 40 acres.
40 acres, are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't remember that part of it.
That is quite a bit of land, isn't it?
Most of it was bush. Wasn't that much of it that was
And then
cleared.
Jim used to work up the sawmill way up by Mission. So he wasn't always home.
No, Daddy worked at the boat he drove cat up at Chehalis, the logging camp.
That's where it was at that time. I know he worked out someplace.
He worked at Chehalis in the logging camp, and so did Jimmy, and so did Richard, and so did Uncle Bob when he moved out there.
You remember that better than I do, because I don't remember it at all. Anyway,
Well, I remember it because when he come home on the Friday nights, he got a ride with a guy that lived down the road. And he always had oranges in his pack when he come home.
Oh,
He had one for each of us kids because they had it all at the camp and we didn't. That was a big treat.
yeah, I can imagine.
We always got an orange when Daddy come home Friday night.
Yeah, in those days we didn't have a very close life, you know what I mean? We weren't living together a lot. We were together, but we weren't together.
Well, had to make money.
Wherever there was a job is where you had to go.
Yeah.
Things were pretty tough going.
When he worked there in 48, when the big flood was there, in Fraser overflowed, because I can remember the boys saying they drove over to Mission, don't know, someplace, Abbotsford or someplace, and then they had to get on a plane to get across the river over so that they could get to the camp. And at that point, I gathered Dad had never flown because the boys had to hog tie him and haul him onto the plane. Because he didn't want to go on that silly thing. I can remember the boys saying that. But once he was on it, he was fine.
Yeah, that was a bad flood. Used to have floods. Really terrible, bad floods, you know.
That's the only one I can remember.
Well, you saw that picture that I have of flood, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But this one afterwards, Dad took us over there and you could see the water lines up 3/4 of the way up the barns. Everything was buried. All you could see was the roofs of the barns.
Good job we weren't living there.
Well, it didn't affect us, other than the fact that Daddy couldn't get to work.
Yeah, it was quite a life. No bed of roses, I can tell you that.
But I can remember when we lived there, Grandpa Andrews and I think it was Uncle Tom came out. And they were on their way to, I don't know where, some creek someplace. And they were building a big sluice and everyththing else. They were going after gold. Don't think he ever found any.
Yeah, that was a sort of a thing that most people had their little hand at it.
And here's a picture from 1945 or 46, Langley. Is that at home?
Yeah, that's on the farm. That's Richard and me, I guess. And Jimmy. That looks like Daddy. And that looks like Mom. Not sure what we were doing. Richard Calf. Remember when they belonged to the Calf Club?
Oh yeah. It was a great life if you didn't weaken, unfortunately. I weakened.
And I'm not sure who this other man is that's with Jimmy and the calf, but maybe he was the vet, I don't know.
It was one of the fellows that worked up at the camp and lived just across the road from, well, down the road a ways and then across the other side. He used to be,
Vickman's.
oh yeah. I wasn't thinking of Vickman, but,
Well, that's who Daddy rode with when he went to camp,
oh yes, that's right, it was.
Mr. Vickman.
Camp was up out of Mission.
Was that a Harrison, up closer to Harrison Hot Springs?
Oh no, it was up there someplace.
Yeah. It was off of Harrison Bay, and then you went up the mountain. And up and up and up. I remember we went there once to see Daddy. Mom was driving. And you had to be very careful because these big logging trucks were coming down that road. And then they dumped their logs into the bay. Well, we're going along, just tickety-boo, and all of a sudden here's this big logging truck in front of us, and Mom pulled over and slammed on the brakes, and we're sitting there. And all of a sudden it dawned on us we were at the camp. The truck was parked.
Oh.
Remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
I do. Because you were very nervous about having to meet all these logging trucks. We'd been lucky, we hadn't met any of them. And all of a sudden this big one was parked there, was there in front of us, and you slammed on the brakes and pulled over to the side of the road. And we must have sat there for 5 or 10 minutes before we realized we were at the camp.
No. No, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. Because we had, I can't remember whether it was lunch or supper. Must have been lunch we had with them. And they ate well. They had steaks and chicken and whatever you wanted. And I mean, it wasn't just a little plate, it was a big plate full. Never seen so much food in all my life. At that point.
Yeah, it was a great life. Tough life. And in most instances, you had to count your pennies, I can tell you that. We never seemed to have enough money.
Yeah, but we got along.
Oh yes, we got along all right. Even if we weren't rich. Raised 3 kids.
No, 4 kids, because you had Richard.
I'm counting my own kids.
Yeah, there was 3 of us plus Richard.
Oh yes, let's see what you're looking at. Yeah, that's right.
When you lived with us as long as, well, pretty as long as I can remember.
Yeah, well after Mum died, he more or less lived with us. My dad would never have made a proper home for him. And I was doing my best to replace Mum, which was an impossibility, of course, but I had to do my best.
Who's beeping?
It's up there somewhere.
It was a great life, I'm telling you. You look back on it now and you wonder how we survived.
Yeah. Well, what was your grandmother and grandfather? What was their name? Grandpa's mom and dad. What was their name?
Who?
Your dad's mom and dad.
Andrews.
I know, but what was their names? Their first names?
I think Grandpa's name was Tom. And Grandma, what was her name? I don't remember what her name was. It was a Scotch name too.
Was she a Lilius or something? Or Elizabeth?
I don't remember what her name was. It's too many years ago. No, I don't think it was Elizabeth. Because that was Mom's name, Elizabeth. I have to get a hold of who we got that. I don't think we've got anybody left that remembers that far back, do we?
No, just you, Mom.
It's almost hopeless when I start to think about it. Some things I can remember so vividly.
Unless Bob, well, I don't know whether Bob would remember or Pat would remember or not, but
Oh, Pat was just a baby. And of course we didn't have Bob in those days, I don't think. No. And then we moved back to Edmonton. Then we moved to come west.
no, you were in Cranbrook.
We were in Cranbrook to start with.
And then you went to Nelson. You were in Nelson for a while.
Yeah.
Then you moved to Trail.
And now that we stayed there,
Then you got married.
we still stayed there.
No, then we moved out to Kennard.
Where's Kennard?
Castlegar.
Castlegar.
Yeah. And then we moved to Ladner for 6 months. And then we moved to Seanwell's place on the bigger road for,
Yeah, I remember that.
we must have been there 2.5 years.
Gosh, I don't remember how long we were there.
Well, the only way I can remember is because I had half of grade 2 in Ladner. No, first part of grade 2 in Ladner. The second part of grade 2 was Murrayville. So maybe 1.5 years, because grade 4 I had at Lockheil.
Oh, yes, dear.
And then we left Lockheil when I was in grade 7 and went to Murrayville.
Yeah, we lived in that little house across from the hospital.
Yeah. And then we were there until
You kids all left.
we all left and I got married, and then 6 months after I got married you went to Clinton.
What?
You went to Clinton.
Oh,
And you were in Clinton for many years.
yeah, we were there
Yeah.
for quite a while.
Quite a while, and then they moved to Williams Lake. They were in Williams Lake for what, about 5 years?
Quite a while we lived in Williams Lake.
And then they moved to Lavington, which is between Vernon and Lumbee.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of it now, I sometimes wonder what in the world we were thinking about all these different moves, and why. But of course, there was always a good reason, because money was hard to come by in those days. If you got a job, you hung on to it. But it was no bed of roses, I can tell you. We lived out in where's that place on the flats there? We had to go quite a long ways to You didn't, because you weren't old enough to go to school there, I don't think. Oh, I can't remember the name of the place.
Out of Trail?
No, down at the coast.
Ladner?
Yeah, the Ladner.
Yeah, well, Dad was just working on the farm there.
Yeah, that's the place I'm thinking of. Farming was a great thing in those days.
Well, much later, I can remember visiting you in Clinton, visiting you and Jim in Clinton.
Yeah, well, we lived there for quite a while too.
And you ran a hotel.
Motel.
Motel.
A little store, yeah.
We did?
Yes, you were in it with Vi and George.
Oh, yes.
And then you bought that other building next door, and you lived upstairs in it, and there was offices downstairs.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
And then I think the people in the offices moved out, and you rented it out as for people to live in.
Yeah, I think so. I have to stop and think how long ago that was.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was.
In the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Surprising that I'm still here. The rate I'm going, though.
Well, the rate you're going, you could go another 5 or 6 years, Mum.
Well, if I can get rid of this, whatever the heck it got me in its grip.
Oh, well, one of those things. At 96,
I
you're
thought
doing
she
pretty
was,
good.
I thought she was 97.
Should be 97 in December.
Ah.
Couple another month and a half.
That's quite the age, Lucy.
Doesn't do me any good, though, the way I'm feeling lately. When I'm feeling okay, I'm fine, you know. I can do anything, but I get this awful pains here, there, and everywhere. It just floors me. But nothing much I can do about that either.
Mm-hmm. When do you have to babysit, Isabelle?
Oh, what time do I have to be over there?
Oh, you're babysitting tonight?
Yeah, there's a thingy at the school, and Yvonne has to go over early to help set up for it. And then David has to go once it's whatever time it's scheduled for.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go over and babysit the kids.
Oh dear.
But they're at karate. What time do they get home from karate? They have karate after school.
Oh.
So I have to be over there. I'm not sure 5-ish, but I have to have supper before I go.
I don't know what time it is.
Oh, 4-ish. 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thereabouts.
10 to 4, quarter to 4.
Quarter to 4.
Oh, shoot. You tell them they're not to do that. They're intruding on my private ladies visiting. That lovely lady.
No. Can't do that, Mom.
My lovely lady.
Can't do that.
She's my lovely lady.
Hi, Joe.
Hello, sorry, just saying hi.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, she's my lovely lady. Nobody else can impose on her.
Well, sorry, Mother, but what are you doing?
I'm just looking at the back of the television
What for?
to see whether to see what can be plugged into it, so that
Is it the back or the side?
the back, so that when I get this video done.
You don't mean to tell me that's been taking a video?
Yeah.
Listen here, young man. You never asked me if you could do that.
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah.
I think I'd give you a good whacking.
I did ask. You said you thought that was a great idea to do the family history.
Well, yes, I did, but I didn't mean for you to start with me.
Well, you're the only one that remembers far back, Mum. I mean, we weren't even born then. We weren't even thought about then.
My first memory, I was about 5 years old. We used to have to go to school and walk. We lived in Edmonton at the time. And we had to, I guess I had to walk 3 blocks to walk. Dad and I drove back there here a couple of summers ago. Back to that area in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that I could even remember it.
Yeah. Well, it was a few years ago, Mum.
Yeah, it was.
Like 15 or 20.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
No.
It had to be, Mum.
Why?
Because Dad died in 1985.
Oh, dear.
So he's been gone, what, 18 years? My arithmetic right here. No, 85, 95, 20 some years.
25
Let's
years.
not think about it. Let's think about that. Anyway. It's quite a life. But there's one thing that I am very proud of, the fact that all of our offsprings are fine, upstanding people. An odd one here and there gets into trouble, but most of them, they're good living men and women, which is a lot more than some people can say for their offsprings.
Yeah, you did a good job, Lucy.
Well, I wasn't responsible for them all. They were all had their own mom and dads.
Yeah, but your teachings made an impression on them, so they passed that on.
Well, I'd like to think so, because I am very proud of all of you, especially my lovely lady. You didn't know I had a lovely lady, did you? I've got a lovely lady.
You talking about Isabelle?
Yeah, when somebody told her that.
Somebody
I don't
wanted to know
who
where
it
my
was.
lovely
Better
lady
hold on to
was.
those.
Uh-huh. Well, she is lovely.
I wasn't quite sure who she was talking about,
She
but
certainly is.
I have to
Yeah, we
stop.
counted. How many did, I can't remember how many descendants you have. I can't remember. We counted them all one day. So 30 something or 40 something?
No, I don't remember as well. I don't even remember counting them. My memory is absolutely blank these days.
Well, it's very selective, isn't it? You can talk about 1920 and you can talk about many things through many years, but not everything. So it's all too much to remember, isn't it?
Well, you know, even like her great grandchildren. I can't even remember their names because, you know, they send and say, okay, we've got a new one. But trying to keep track of them all, you know, it's hard.
No, it is hard. Very hard.
Like Jimmy's had 6 kids, and one has died. One has 2. And from those 2, she's got 3 grandchildren on that, great-grandchildren on that side. Laurie's had 2, and she's got 1, 2, 3, 4 from them. Barb's never had any. Danny's had 2. Donald's got 3 or 4. Can't remember. 3, I think. So, you know, once you start getting into the wee ones again, it's hard to keep track of their names.
It sure is. I've forgotten a lot of them now.
Well, I can't remember Adam's children's names. I had them written down someplace for you.
Adam.
Yeah. That's Laurie's. That's Jimmy's. Jimmy's Laurie's. Jimmy had Laurie, and Laurie had Adam, and Adam's got 3.
I forgot about them.
But I can't remember their names.
Oh dear.
I'd have to look it up in my
I
book.
get sort of disgusted with myself, but I can't help it. My mind is just blank. Some of these things.
Well, I think you've got, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, at least 7 great-great-grandchildren.
And what time do you have to be away?
Oh, pretty soon. I have to get supper before I go.
Well, we might as well wrap it up. But I hope next week, Lucy, to have finished that first video that we did last week. I've been working on it.